Are you interested in making your own elderberry syrup from dried elderberries? Well, you're in luck because today I'm going to show you how with a universal recipe. It's Jody with All About the Harvest, where I teach people how to grow, use, and preserve their harvest. And today I'm going to be showing you how I make elderberry syrup. Now, we have plenty of elderberry bushes on our property, and I use them in multiple ways. I use them fresh, I freeze them, and I also dry them. Today I am going to show you how to make elderberry syrup from dried elderberries. Now, if you're interested in learning how to make elderberry syrup from elderberry juice, then watch the video that I have above that I created about 1.5 years ago. In that video, I tell you how to make the elderberry syrup from elderberry juice. If in the future you want to learn how to make elderberry syrup from fresh elderberries, then make sure you subscribe to my channel because I will create that video in the future after I need another batch of elderberry syrup. Now, in case you weren't aware, elderberry syrup is great for colds and flus and to prevent people from getting sick, but also if you are sick, it's really good to help you get over that cold or flu quicker. So let me tell you how I make my elderberry syrup. Now, I mentioned this is a universal recipe. And so what does that mean? That means that you can use this regardless of the amount of elderberries you have. So I'm going to be giving you a recipe based on parts. So this recipe calls for 1 part of dried elderberries to 2 parts of water. Now, when I say 1 part, that could be whatever amount of elderberries you want to use. So if you're using 1 cup of elderberries, that would be 1 part. And then you would use 2 parts of water. So if you're using 1 cup of elderberries, then you would use 2 cups of water. What we're going to use today is 1/2 of a cup. So 1/2 of a cup is going to equal 1 part. If 1/2 equals 1 part, then 1 cup would equal 2 parts. So in today's recipe, I am going to show you how to make it with 1/2 of a cup of dried elderberries. We're going to add that 1/2 of a cup of dried elderberries to 1 cup of water. So let me bring you over to the stove so that you can get a better look at what we're doing. So as you can see, I already put my 1 cup of water in here and it is starting to warm up. You can see it's starting to steam and there's getting to be little bubbles on the bottom. So what I'm going to do next is add my 1/2 cup of dried elderberry. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to stir it around. Now, at this point, I want to bring this to a boil. So I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit on this, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, then I am going to reduce the heat and simmer it for about 45 minutes. So when this comes to that boil, then I will bring you back and show you that, and then I'll show you the next steps. We want this to come to a boil because these dried elderberries are dry. We want them to go ahead and rehydrate up. And remember, at this point, we don't have any honey or anything in it, so it's okay for this to boil. I'm going to go ahead and turn my burner down so that this will simmer for that 45 minutes. So I just turned it down. I'm going to stir it. So depending upon how fast it's simmering, you may need to add more water, and that's okay. I added about 1/4 of a cup of water to it because there was hardly any liquid in it. Now, the other thing I wanted to let you know is you could, if you wanted, you could use a potato masher to kind of help extract some of that juice from those berries, after they've rehydrated for a bit. What I personally do is I want to try to extract as much of that juice from those berries. And as you can see, there's, I added that 1/4 cup. There's not a lot. Those berries take up some of that water, and then, that low simmer does as well. So You may want to add a little bit more as you're getting to that point. And I said 45 minutes. You could simmer it for less. I would say 30 minutes to 45 minutes. We are currently just at 30 minutes of simmering right now, and I added that 1/4 cup of water back probably about 10 minutes ago. I did end up going ahead and added another 1/4 cup, so a total of a 1/2 cup to this. Right now the timer says I have about 13 minutes left. What I'm gonna do, because I added some additional water, I'm gonna bring it up, the heat up just a little bit, just to kind of get it back to that warmer temperature, and then I'll turn it back down again. I won't add any additional time onto this. Our timer is just about to go off, so I am going to go ahead and turn the stove off. I'm clearing that timer off. So now what you want to do is you want to let this sit, and we want to let it sit and cool down enough that we can safely go ahead and strain it. And we're going to strain it through a fine mesh strainer back into a measuring cup, because what we need to do after this cools down, we need to go ahead and see how much actual liquid is in here. And that's important because when we actually make the syrup, we are going to mix equal parts of the juice and equal parts of honey, and that will make our syrup. So let this cool down, and then I'll show you how to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and strain this. As you can see, it's pretty thick. Try to get some of that juice out. All right, while that is straining, I'm gonna just rinse this out because we are going to use it again to add some of that honey. Okay, I went ahead and just rinsed out that pan as I'm just kind of squishing this to get as much juice as possible. And now I'm going to see how much juice we actually got. We got 4 ounces. So basically from a 1.5 cups to 4 ounces, because remember I added those 2 1/4 cups. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna dump this back in. So this is now a really nice, thick, medicinal elderberry juice. To this, I'm gonna add an equal amount of honey. I'm gonna add 4 ounces of honey. Just gonna go ahead and add that. Give you a little tip after I add this. So we don't want this to boil. I have this on low. I just want this honey to go ahead and dissolve. I do not want it to boil at all. We don't want to lose any of those medicinal properties. So let that kind of heat up a little bit. The extra tip I have is because you have all this honey in here and you don't want to waste it. What I do is after this gets a little warm, I take some of this liquid and I add it back into this Pyrex container to kind of get it to dissolve. And I try not to make a mess. Again, I try. Okay. So now we got some of that liquid in there. So you're going to do this until that's completely incorporated. That honey has to be nice and melted. I'll probably do that one more time in here. And then when you're done with that, your syrup is complete. Now remember earlier I said this is a universal recipe. And I said that because we were using parts. As a reminder, this was 1 part of dried elderberries, 2 parts of water, and then an equal part of that leftover liquid that you get from that with honey. So however much of that leftover strained elderberry juice that you get, you're going to add that exact same amount with honey. So we had 4 ounces of that liquid, and so we did an equal part 4 ounces of honey, and then that is making this elderberry syrup. Okay, and since this is 4 ounces of honey and 4 ounces of juice, this should fit in an 8-ounce jar. So I'm going to go ahead, pour this in there. And that is perfect. Get all that goodness. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and let this cool down. So while I'm letting that cool on the stove, I thought I would tell you some ways that you can take this depending upon what you have going on. So first of all, make sure you put it in the fridge after it's cooled down, and it can stay in there for about 3 months. Now, if you want to take it every day as a maintenance, you're welcome to do that. And I would suggest 1 to 2 teaspoons a day for maintenance. That's just to prevent you from getting a cold or a flu. If you are experiencing a cold or a flu, or people in your household are experiencing that, then I would suggest 1 to 2 tablespoons multiple times a day. So I would say at least 3 times a day, but whenever you think about it, you could go up to 6 times a day. There isn't really a problem with this, except for children under 1 year of age because of the honey in it. So in that case, you could change the honey out for maple syrup, which also has health benefits as well. For toddlers, I would say, a 1/4 teaspoon, maximum 3 times a day. Now, I'm also not a certified herbalist, so make sure you do your own research on that. That's just what I have read. Now, of course, this made a small batch, an 8-ounce batch, but you can make more as you see fit. That's the nice thing about that universal recipe that I was telling you, is that you can use however much or however little that you want, as long as it falls within those guidelines. If you have 3/4 cup of dried elderberries on hand, then use your 3/4 cup as your 1 part, knowing that you're going to have to double that for water. And then whatever juice you have left after heating that up, then that is going to be the amount that you need to mix with your honey. So maybe it's the amount of honey that is your limiting factor. Maybe you only have a cup of honey, in which case then you know that you don't want to have any more than a cup of that juice. So use that recipe as needed to kind of help you figure out how much you can make based on the amount of ingredients that you have. And if you have an abundance of honey, an abundance of elderberries like I do, then go ahead and try something to start with. So then I would suggest trying the 1 cup of elderberries to start with. And that would yield you about a pint after you're finished of your elderberry syrup. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please hit that thumbs up button. That does help my channel when you do that, and please consider subscribing. If you do hit that bell button after you subscribe, then you will be sent notifications when I release a new video. Remember, I will be releasing a video on how to make elderberry syrup from fresh or frozen elderberries. Again, this is Jody with All About the Harvest, where I teach you how to grow, use, and preserve your harvests. And until next time, stay healthy.